Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Streamlining Integrated Project Planning with Safran Project 7 and SAP. We are excited that you're with us today, and we appreciate that you've made the time to be on today's webinar. A couple of housekeeping items before we get started. We have everyone muted for the presentation duration, just so that we can have a clean recording, which will be available on the safran.com website after today's event. Secondly, we encourage you to submit questions during the presentation so that we can answer those during our Q&A session at the end of the hour. Now, with us today, we have an esteemed group of presenters. First off, we have Dean Edmondson, CEO of Safran Americas, as well as Wes Gillette, who is the Director of Client Services here at Safran. Also joining us from Germany is Matthias Eichel, who's the Senior Project Manager from Vesta Partners. So, without any further ado, I will pass it off to Dean, who will get us started.
Thanks, Doug. Appreciate the introduction. As Doug mentioned, my name is Dean Edmondson. I'm the CEO of Safran Americas, and we have other presenters here, Wes Gillette, Matthias Eichel, who will cover the product. Wes will cover the Safran Project product, and Matthias will extend that coverage and share how Safran Project is integrated with SAP. We had over 100 registrants for this webinar, and I apologize that you can't see all the people that are attending this, but just to name a few of the organizations that are in attendance, we have Cameron, Talisman, CH2M Hill, NASA, and Aker Solutions, just to name a few of the organizations that have attended. And obviously, SAP as well as Vesta Partners are in attendance. So what we'd like to cover today is a quick company overview of who Safran is. And for those of you who aren't familiar with us, it'll be brief, but we'll give you a background of how the company was developed and the customers that we support today. Then we'd like to transition and talk to some of the macro challenges that the project portfolio management space is seeing. And then we'll hand it off to Wes to walk through a product demonstration of Safran 7. And then, as I mentioned earlier, Matthias will then extend that demonstration to take Safran Project 7 into an integration with SAP to show how we've aligned both business processes and project processes to streamline project management across organizations. And as Doug mentioned, please feel free to enter any questions you might have along the way in the chat section. We'll be happy to take those at the end of the presentation. So with that, let's kick it off with a background of who Safran is as an organization. Safran Software Solutions has been in the marketplace for over 20 years. We have thousands of customers using our solutions to deliver projects on time and within budget. We traditionally focus on the asset and project intensive verticals, which you can see here, with our project management and risk management solutions. Some of the customers that we have the honor of working with are listed here. As you can imagine, these customers range with types of projects that they execute. Many of them have capital programs, they have maintenance or sustaining work that they want to plan and execute, as well as shutdown turnaround analogies. Always complex projects, and always striving to deliver those projects on budget and within schedule, and we help them achieve that. So what I'd like to do now is transition, and in this transition, I'd like to cover a little bit of the macro trends that we're seeing in the marketplace. And these macro trends apply to any industry. So when we look at this, we're looking for ways to gain insight and make informed decisions on how we stay ahead of the competition. In this particular scenario, we're going to talk about the energy industry, but again, it applies to any industry that your organization belongs to. So we know, according to the International Energy Agency, that there's going to be around a $48 trillion investment over the next 20 years in just meeting the world's energy demand, and that comes through via projects, right? So there's going to be quite a few projects on building out the infrastructure to transfer that energy to communities, as well as being able to tap into that energy, whether it's nuclear energy or oil, gas, etc. So many of the $48 trillion is going to be dedicated to projects, and Accenture did a recent study and found that only 30% of projects are being delivered on budget, and 15% of those projects are being delivered on time. That's not a good metric. And if I was the CEO of any of these organizations, I would be looking out over the horizon as well, asking the question, how do I execute my projects more flawlessly? Because 30% on budget, 15% on time is just not acceptable, knowing that we're going to have a significant portion of that $48 trillion investment. Compounded in the oil and gas industry, compounded by the fact that the Brent crude price has fallen nearly 60% since June 2014. This translates into a 50% reduction in most organizations' CapEx spend. So that executive looking out over the horizon is also asking the question, I know I need to make the investments because the growing world demand is going to require it. But today, based on the ebbs and flow of the economy, we have a situation in which we have to cut CapEx by 50%. Which projects in our portfolio of projects do I cut by 50%? Do I cut by 50%? So they have to begin to ask themselves, do we have a grasp of our portfolio management capabilities? Do we really know the health of our projects today? And how do we gauge that health of those projects today to determine which ones make the baseline or the water level of above the water level, so that we actually execute against them, and which ones fall below the watermark, knowing that we got to shelve those or delay those later. So these are challenges that those logos that we presented earlier that our customers ask us. So when we're talking to any of those customers that we have the pleasure of working with today, they're always asking us, Safran, how can we select our projects more strategically? And then how can we execute against those projects flawlessly? Because they don't want to get in that trap that Accenture presented of only 30% on budget, 15% on time, nor do they want to fall into the trap of when the market makes adjustments, how do we figure out which projects we're going to keep alive, and how do we figure out which projects we're going to shelve and rationalize in that portfolio. So what we've done is we've worked very collaboratively with SAP to put together an integrated solution that helps organizations understand this. First, the selecting the best projects. How do we select them strategically? Well, there's a number of different ways organizations do this, and by no means are we suggesting our way is the right way, but we think that there's a combination of looking at ways qualitatively and quantitatively to make the best selection of projects, and then to monitor that portfolio of projects over time, so that if you're in a situation where you have a 50% CapEx, you know which ones to shelve and which ones to invest more aggressively in, because it's going to take you out of that downturn faster, and you're going to get an edge on your competition. So our customers look at, and we recommend, you look at performance, you look at risk opportunities and alignment of corporate goals to really identify what that optimum portfolio of projects should look like. And that scenario could look something like this. How are my projects performing from a cost, schedule, and scope perspective? And here, many of you have seen this quadrant before. Across the x-axis, you have schedule performance index, and across the y-axis, we have cost performance index. In the upper right-hand quadrant, all your projects are doing great, right? Ahead of schedule and under budget. This is a great scenario to be in. And if we just looked at this scenario, we would assume that all the projects below 1 on the CPI, or the cost performance index, would be projects that we probably need to pay attention to. And for that matter, the projects that are behind schedule and under budget. But that's not the reality of the world that we live in, because it's just not all quantitative. So there's a qualitative aspect as well. So if you take that same portfolio of projects, same exact portfolio of projects, and now you look at them through a different lens. This lens brings risk, opportunities, and corporate goal alignment into play. So for predictability of success on the y-axis, we're looking at risk. For corporate goal alignment and opportunities on the x-axis, we're looking at net present value. And as you can see, based on the colors of these different projects, they've all moved around. And so this is where that, again, that executive looking out over the horizon needs to sit down with his team and say, which of these projects are going to strategically advantage us in the marketplace and bring us out stronger than we were when we went into this downturn? Or which of these projects, if it's an upturn, are going to help us accelerate momentum in the marketplace and stay ahead of the competition? And for the sake of brevity, we're just drawing a water line across the median value here and say we're going to get rid of the ones that fall below here. And a simple way of looking at this is through SAP's project portfolio management solution today. So when you integrate the SAP portfolio management solution with the Safran solution, and you have this tight integration so that you can monitor both qualitative and quantitative aspects of your project, you can have that vision and that insight so that at any given upturn or downturn in your industry, you can quickly say, these are the projects that we're going to double down on, these are the projects we're going to shelve, and you have that competitive advantage against the rest of the marketplace. It's critical to be able to select those projects strategically, but it's also critical to be able to manage and see those projects mature in health over time, and then give the ones guidance that need guidance. So once you've selected that project now, or those portfolio projects, the next question, if you remember, that the executives have asked us is, how do we execute against these projects flawlessly? And it's a challenge. Executing against projects flawlessly today is a challenge. All the organizations that we work with have embraced the mantra of standardization on their ERP system. So they've standardized on SAP or other ERP systems. They haven't embraced the concept as much of standardization on your project applications. So we see decentralized project applications across the organization. Microsoft, Excel, Safran, and others are in there. And there is no real good coordination between the project information, which is really driving the organization. An organization is made up of many projects, and the corporate information. So that risk is compounded by the fact that you have so many different systems, by the fact you have many people focused on data entry instead of corrective actions. And the result is, just as Accenture predicted it earlier, your actual costs are ahead or over, and your schedule is ahead. So this is not a scenario that we can continue to execute against and expect to change the 30 and 15 that Accenture shared with us. So what, again, SAP and Safran have done is we've changed the model. We've integrated our project portfolio management solution so you have one version of the truth across the organization, so that your ERP systems now are standard and complementary to your project management systems. And you enter the data once and you benefit from it over and over again in fit-for-purpose applications. The project team has the application they need to execute their work. The rest of the business has the application and tools they need to make go, no-go decisions, while all of this is risk adjusted. And Wes will talk about how we risk adjust these schedules to give you a higher degree of confidence in your plan. So the end result is your projects are delivered on time and within budget. What I'd like to do now is hand this off to Wes in a second, and Wes is going to talk about three key themes. He's going to talk about how do you create the plan, how do you risk adjust the plan. Remember, we got to deliver the projects flawlessly, so there has to be a minimal amount of risk associated to those. And then how do you manage to that plan? And I'll ask you to think about these three things as we go through this. Disconnected platforms, do they exist in your environment today? Do you have a planning and scheduling solution that has risk management built in it so that your planners and schedulers can quickly risk adjust those plans? And how difficult are your systems to use and integrate with your business applications? So with that, I'd like to hand it over to Wes to walk us through the Safran project solution.
Thanks, Dean. As you can see, we have a project we've created here in Safran Project, and obviously we spent some time building out activities, linking them together, adding resources, etc. What I thought we'd show you is how easy it is to get to this point, and then we'll come back to the schedule. We'll walk through a couple of examples of managing the schedule, risk adjusting the schedule, and some of the reports that are available to us. All right, so if I want to create a new project schedule, very easy to do from either a project or a project template. The templates are fantastic. If there's a type of work that you do very similar and want to begin to enforce standards in your organization, very easy to do that. As I create a new project plan, of course, I've got a blank slate, but it's very easy to get started. As I want to go and create new activities, I've got the ability to easily right-click and add activities, right? Very easy to do so. I can easily link these activities together, highlighting them, linking them together. If I want to change durations, of course, it's easy to fill down and begin to do that. So very easily to either create from template, create a project from scratch, and get started very easily. Of course, we want to add some codes to our projects and do that, whether it be activity codes, phase, just other information we have so we can group, sort, and organize that. We have the ability to create user fields. You can create them natively here, or you can import them, right? And so it's easy to bring in those standards and create templates around those as well, so you have consistent coding across your projects, making it easy to sort, group, and organize. So kind of a quick way to get started, I'm going to go back to the project that we've got here, and as you can see, I've got this sorted, I think it's grouped by WBS currently right now. You can see, as you've probably seen me already navigate across these office-like toolbars that we were using. It makes it very easy to know exactly where to go, what to do. All the functionality is available to you. So I'm going to walk through a couple of different project views that give you an idea as we go through not only of the ways you can structure your projects, ways you can format it. We've heard from customers time and time again, having to make sure it's easy to highlight the critical path, as we see here shown in red, as well as just having the flexibility to augment the bar chart with additional data as they see needed. So we've got a schedule, we've got some durations in. If I want to look at resource assignments, I'm either able to go and do that. I can look at my resources, I can jump into a specific activity, see the resource assignment there. If you notice, I've also got the ability to display that information in the bar chart itself, so I can see which resources are assigned, what the quantity is. I've got a view of a histogram here, right, showing me the resources assigned to this activity as well as other activities, so I get an idea of what my resource demand looks like. And again, all of this is here available to me as I work on building my schedule. Dean also mentioned the ability to risk adjust the schedule. So maybe I built the schedule and I realize there is some estimate uncertainty, some duration uncertainty around that, and I want to understand what that means to my project. I'm going to jump ahead to a risk-adjusted view here, and so what we've done here is we've gone and run a simple risk analysis, right? We have the ability to either enter in discrete 3-point estimates for each individual activity. You could do a kind of a quick risk idea, which is where you use percentages to allocate a range of uncertainty across a set of activities or all of the activities. And when you do that and you run the analysis, we'll go ahead and do that again. All right, you not only get the ability to display those bars here and see what the ranges are, but then you can also take a look at what the distribution is for your project or a particular activity, right? And we can also take a look at what is driving our project as well too, right? So now we're able to jump in and take a look here and see what the biggest project drivers are, and that gives us an idea of where we want to focus some of our attention. So it's easy to quickly enter that information, get a sense of that, work with this within the project team and the scheduling team to understand how those uncertainties impact the schedule itself, which may lead you into then thinking about doing some what-if scenarios, right? You want to take a look at how you might adjust the schedule differently to accommodate for some of those different factors. We have the ability to build multiple alternative schedules right here within project itself. So you can take your existing schedule, you can then go in and create additional what-if schedules, allowing you to change durations, activities, calendars. Very common to wonder, what happens to my schedule if I'm able to swap out the calendar, right? From a 5 to a 7, if we go from an 8 to a 12-hour calendar, what happens? Does that make a material difference to the projects in terms of that? And what does that do to our cost? Able to model all of those types of impacts here, all within the application. Now, it's great to be able to model that and see what if, but how do I actually affect that change back into my schedule? Well, we have the ability to do that. We're able to actually copy from any of those what ifs that you created back into your original schedule. So now you're able to not only create those different what ifs, but then also actually apply them back into your schedule, update your schedule, and move forward, right? So very easy to understand and manage your plan, manage those different scenarios, all within this one scheduling application. Now, you may also have the need to, as part of that managing process is managing change orders. How do you go about doing that? Well, with the integrated change register, what we're able to do is to track those different changes within the project using the integrated change register, right? And so here's a couple of examples of an incoming request, and you can choose how to collect this information, organize it as you want. But what we're able to do here is collect changes in resources, if there's a schedule impact, etc. So here's a request, and we've captured this request. Here's an example of an approved one, and again, we are able to not only because we track that information here in the schedule, we're able to see over the life of the project where those changes came from, what change order they were attached to, and then also plot those out here on the bar chart as well too. So you're always able to keep track of, what was our original scope, what change orders impacted our project, and where did those changes come from, and what was the impact to our project. So we're able to go about doing that as well. So a couple of examples of some of the reports, right? All within here, in addition to a variety of reports that here are offered across the reports tab. Able to create your own histogram S-curves. We've got schedule check type reports. If you do earned value reporting, we have native support for all of those formats 1 through 5, OMB 300. So a variety of different reports you can do. One of the more powerful ones is the ability to easily pull up some of these histograms, and you can create a variety of different histograms, seeing what your resource looks like as well, right? What your resource demand is. You can stack it by resource. You can stack it by any of the codes that you've, again, built into the project. So very easy to get some great insight into what's going on with your resources. And then if you want to track your schedule performance, it's also have the ability to do that as well too. Right, so here's an example of where we've been tracking and not only our schedule but our cost performance, and so now we're actually to see how we're performing, and from here we could also do forecasting as well too, right? So we can see what our planned versus earned were, and then if we wanted to lay in a forecast as well, we could do that. So a variety of easy to use functionality, familiar type interface, easy to do, kind of the scheduling tool that you're used to, type of scheduling tool you're used to using to very easily build, create a plan, manage a plan, and now even risk adjust a plan as well too, all consolidated within one application. So with that, we'll hand it back to Dean.
Thanks. That was a great overview of Safran Project, where you were able to show planning, scheduling, risk management, change management, and reporting all in one integrated solution. That's one of the questions that we ask: how difficult are your systems to use today? And most organizations would have to use 2 or 3 different applications to accomplish that. And I don't know of any other organization in the world that offers planning and scheduling and risk management all in one application. Taking away the inherent risks that would be coupled with sending a schedule to yet another application, adjusting the risk, and then sending it back. So nice overview, and I think the value there is easily understood. What we'd like to do now, let me, you guys see my screen in full size, Wes?
Yes, sure can.
Okay. What I'd like to do now is tee up the discussion that Matthias is going to take us through. And as I mentioned earlier, he's going to extend the conversation that we just had with Wes about Safran Project 7 and then how that could enable an organization that's using SAP or any other ERP system to streamline their process of project management and business management. In this particular case, let's just assume that it's a turnaround type scenario where you have work orders that are being generated, hundreds if not thousands of work orders that you want to execute during a turnaround in SAP's PM module. And then number 2, you have a project that's been commissioned. And you have a number of projects that are set up in SAP's PS module. Those have been commissioned. So you have the budgetary and the high-level information in the PS module. And 3, you've commissioned a number of contractors to work on this turnaround. So they're going to submit to you WBS level schedules for their work in Microsoft Project and P6. What Safran does a great job of is we have this off-the-shelf integration called Safran Integrator for SAP that pulls work orders in from the PM module, that pulls information in and shares it back and forth between the PS module, and we integrate with Microsoft Project and P6. So in one master schedule, you can have all this fidelity of data and know that you have a single version of the truth that you can then, remember that executive looking out over the horizon? He or she can then go back and say, within my Safran portfolio management solution, I know my projects are up to date and I know what the health is because we have the right system set up to model our processes in-house. And that's what Matthias is going to walk us through. Not the fidelity of all of this, but he's going to give you a nice little snapshot of how we enable CapEx and OpEx workflow by integrating SAP PS and PM, and then how within Safran, like Wes just walked us through, how you can maintain the fidelity of data and give to that planner and scheduler and that risk professional the right tools, the fit for purpose tools to do their job, so that the data is harmonized between the two applications through integrator, and you have one version of the truth. Project shareholders and corporate shareholders are now well aligned, and you're focused on how do you beat the competition, not how do you respond to 30% on the budget, 15% on the time. So with that, I'd like to hand it off to Matthias to walk us through the integration scenario.
Thank you, Dean. Hello, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Matthias.
Okay, great. So yes, I would like to pick it up from here and bring the twist of the integration between Safran and SAP into the picture. And we were talking about a typical workflow for CapEx projects, and this typically would start out, as we've seen at the beginning of the slideshow, in project and portfolio management. And as an outcome of this, there would be an SAP and approval workflow where the rudimentary shell of a project, of a CapEx project, would be created, which I have prepared here, probably with a few WVS to structure it out first. Then you put your basic budget on the project, but no details in it. It's just the rudimentary project shell which we want to work with. So this is on the SAP side, the outcome of the workflow of an approval. And on the other side, I will have a Safran project, and this Safran project also very simple here, but I just wanted to show you the idea. Has here a branch for CapEx activities and a branch for OpEx activities, and they are grouped as we've seen it in Wes' demonstration within different WBS structures. So the link between these two projects now, the empty one in SAP as an outcome of an approval workflow, and the detailed one here in Safran would be the Safran integrator. So let me go to the Safran integrator. We have here a couple of project links. I will pick one for the CapEx project, and what this is telling me here in this transaction, I want to synchronize the project definition in SAP with the project in Safran, and I want to do it in the stage of planning. We saw in the last slide from Dean that for different stages in the project life cycle, we can set up different synchronizations. In this case, we want to now go from Safran to SAP. Usually, this might also run into in the background, and you won't see anything of it as a background job overnight. But just to demonstrate you this, how it will work is the project would be compared, and as an outcome of this, I can see here the system figured out, okay, there are a couple of activities that have to be created in project system, and going down here, after activities, there are WBS elements which have to be created because the project, as you remember, was completely empty, and relationships have to be created. So the next step would be to synchronize the project. And if I just to show you this, compare the projects again, then the relationships are still there to be created. That is because in the first step they couldn't be created because the activities were not there. So in the second step, I can see, okay, relationships are still missing. I have to do another synchronization for the relationships for the activities that are there now. This is done now. And if I go back to my project in SAP, and I pull it up, then you can see that it has created the same structure as in Safran. And we have created networks below the WBS element, and we have created activities below the networks. The work centers were created, which are the resource assignments on the Safran side, and also the relationships have been created, which you can see here. So this was brought all over from Safran, but at the same time, if I click F5 here and do a refresh in Safran, you can see that the activity numbers now have been changed to the networks where they are put into. And this is here now the link. I have here the network number, the dash, the activity number, so I have a clear numbering point between SAP and Safran, which gives me a good overview which activity belongs to which activity in SAP. This would be an example for a CapEx project. Let me show you another example for plant maintenance. So we'll open up now the project or network in Safran. And this one, as you can see here, is now my empty shell. No activities have been created yet for this project. And on the other side, I have here in SAP, I have here a work order. And this work order typically consists of a work order header and a couple of operations, components, and so forth. And what I will do now, I will go to the Safran integrator. And I will choose a scenario here for a PM upload. You can see here the same situation. I refer to the Safran project. I have here a different screen. I want to pick up work orders from number 533 to 535. And I could do here a little more selection, like selecting for revision code or function location. You could put in other things here like equipment or whatsoever. And now my direction is bringing up from SAP the work orders to Safran project. So it's basically the same story. I compare the projects and I can see here the difference now between the work orders and the Safran project. So it wants to create for the different work orders the operations, which you see here. And if I go now to my Safran project and do refresh, sorry, I forgot to sync. I just did the compare yet. So of course I have to synchronize the project. And if I do now the refresh, then you can see how my operations are lining up now in one project. And what I could do now, I could manipulate here the operations from the different work orders. We could link the operations together. And then you can see here the linkage between the operations and the schedule for the different operations would change. You could also work on the durations and the resource assignments or whatsoever. And the next step would now be to bring back the schedule from Safran to SAP. So in this case, now I have to go back to my integrator. And now I want to choose the other direction. So now I want to go here with the transfer set from Safran again into SAP. and it's the same story as before. I compare the projects. Now it figures out, okay, I have these activities, but now it's not a creation, it's an update. It's an update in SAP, as we said. Let's synchronize it. And you're done. Now let's switch back to SAP. I have here the first of these 3 work orders. And if I go in here, you immediately see that the status is set to D6, D6 meaning data set by external system. And the operation has now picked up the dates which are in Safran. It's starting from 15th of May and ending on the 9th of July. And this is the same that you can see here. First operation will start on the 15th of May and ending on the 9th of July, which would be then this date here. So Safran was in this case driving now the schedule in SAP and the linkage and the manipulation of your operations, which you usually would have to do in SAP, which would be a lot more work. This concludes my little presentation about the integration for plant maintenance and project system with the Safran integrator.
All right, thank you, Matthias. Thank you for that nice overview of how connected applications streamline. So as we just heard from Wes and Doug, and the 3 questions that I posed earlier, I think we can agree that they were answered. Disconnected platforms. Matthias really hit on how we unify the disconnection that exists between business platforms and project platforms today through our Safran integrator for SAP. And Wes really hit on, does your solution have a risk analysis solution? Innate within our core planning and scheduling solution is a risk analysis solution. And difficult to use. How difficult? I mean, these are questions that you as customers need to ask. How difficult are the many platforms that you need to use today to execute this type of workflow for your business? We think we've streamlined it significantly. We think that we've helped that executive looking out over the horizon to answer his or her questions. How do I select my projects strategically? How do I execute against them flawlessly in a much more fluid fashion? Now, just to summarize some of the key points that we've touched on today, our relationship with SAP is very strong. We have a certification on the HANA platform. We're working towards a certification on the integration that should happen within the next month. The data fields that Matthias presented are very flexible and extensible. We've integrated, obviously, schedule and risk, which gives you quick time to value because you have all of those core capabilities as well as change management and reporting in one solution, covering the last bullet as well. Now, what I'd like to do in transitioning to this next slide, let me see if I can make that happen here. There we go. What I'd like to do is open it up for questions. So if you haven't submitted any questions at this point, please submit your questions in the chat room. We have quite a few people on this call, so we would really appreciate it if you could type in your questions in the chat section. And then while you're typing in your questions there, I'm sure Doug's getting ready to ask a few to the team. I'd also ask you to look at how to contact us at safran.com. And then if you go to the product pages or under products, you'll notice we have Safran Project as well as SAP Integrator, Safran Integrator for SAP. If you're interested in what you saw today, please come down to this button on the far right-hand side here and request a demonstration. We'd be happy to set that up for you. So with that, I'd like to pass it off to Doug to ask any questions that have arose during the presentation.
All right, fantastic. Thank you, Dean and Wes and Matthias. It was a fantastic presentation, very informative and useful. Yeah, we have had some questions come in, so let's dive into those. And definitely, like Dean said, if you have a question that you haven't submitted yet, please do so. We've got about 15 minutes till the top of the hour, so we'll try to get all of your questions in. Let's see, the first question we have is, what technology is used to integrate Safran and SAP, and is it extensible to other SAP fields? Matthias, does that sound like yours?
Yeah, we are using an RFC technology within SAP, and this, as you saw on the screens, this is at the moment a pure SAP application. The plan is in the next version to trigger this outside from Safran also. And with Safran, we communicate over an HTTP REST protocol, which is very lightweight. You just need an HTTP connection between the two systems to communicate. Oh yeah, and the extensibility of the fields. Like with every BAPIs in SAP for this matter, in the plant maintenance realm and in the project system realm, there are so-called body extensions, and all customer fields like so-called Z fields or Y fields, which have been customized into your project system or your plant maintenance, can be read and written from the solution.
Okay, fantastic. Our next question is, are there any customers using the integrated solutions today? Dean, you want to take that one?
Sure, and thank you for giving Matthias the last question. I really appreciate that. Regarding this question, though, we have a number of customers who have integrated Safran and SAP, and we have a few customers that are working through the proof of concept. So Safran Integrator for SAP is a new product. We have recently just launched the product, and we launched it based on customer demand. So ironically, there are quite a few customers in the proof of concept phase right now that we're working with. Statoil happens to be one, but there are many others that we're discussing this with, and many who have used us in an integrated fashion before. So this is familiar territory for us. It's just a much more streamlined and much more efficient way to accomplish that unification between the business and the project.
Okay, great. Let's see, our next question is, how would you compare Safran Project to P6?
That's a tough question. So, you know, I actually spent around 10 years at Primavera, so I'm very familiar with the solution. There's a number of ways that we can compare the solution. I hope that today's presentation gave you some points of differentiation. Obviously, our risk component is something that nobody else has in the marketplace. Our time to value and our ability to generate reports, get up and running in an extremely short period of time is another differentiator. And then our relationship with SAP is a very strong relationship. And I don't think Oracle could or would claim that they have such a relationship. So I think there are a number of differentiators. If we wanted to get into feature functionality comparison, we'd be happy to sit down with the customer and walk through what their use cases are and how our product could benefit them. But I think that would be a little bit tough on today's call. So I gave you some high-level macro differentiators.
Okay, that's great, and definitely encourage anyone in attendance who'd like to discuss further to go to safran.com and request a one-on-one demonstration. Okay, next question. I think this has already been covered, but the question is Safran certified to work with SAP?
Yeah, so it is on two fronts. Well, we have certification today that we work within the SAP HANA environment. We are working through, and we'll have certification within the next month, that the integration that Matthias has just presented will be fully certified. I give you a high degree of confidence, as I would give anyone on this, that it will get certified, because we've been working very collaboratively with SAP to design this. Our customers have not only reached out to us to make this work, they're reaching out and working with SAP. So we take this forward as one organization into the marketplace.
Okay, great. A question we just had come in, we've actually had quite a few come in, so I'm going to get to all of those, but the first one was, can the processes you demonstrated be scripted to allow for them to be run without requiring user interaction?
Matthias,
yes,
that has to be you.
I will take this one. Yes, as I said, you can set up jobs in SAP which are triggered to a certain time during the night, preferably, which is then executing the synchronization in the way you set it up. If you saw, we have different project links, and for the different project stages, we can set up different scenarios in which direction you are sending and even which fields you are sending. And this is basically just a matter of setting up your batch job sequence accordingly, or one batch job in the right sequence, and then everything happens in the background, and you don't have to do this clicking, which I just demonstrated.
Okay, great. And you may have answered this next question while you were talking just then, but the next question is there any integration from Safran back to PPM directly?
Matthias, do you want me to take this one and fill in any gaps?
Yeah, sure.
So SAP's project portfolio management solution and the integration to Safran is enabled through our integration to the PS module. As those of you who know the SAP landscape, the PS module feeds into the PPM module all the fidelity of the data from the project perspective. So we do integrate to the PPM solution and the CPM solution and many other core SAP solutions through the PS module and through the PM modules.
Okay, great. Let's see. Next question is, do you have product training and services for your solutions? Dean, you want to take that one?
Yeah, so Safran offers obviously both of these. We also have an extensive group of partners that we work with. Matthias is from Vesta Partners. So Vesta Partners has worked with us to roll this out globally, and I personally have had great success with them in many occurrences, as well as regional partners around the globe who are up to speed on the Safran products, as well as coming up to speed on the Safran integrator for SAP. So yes, we can handle those types of requests through our organization and through our channel partners who have more presence in geographies that we might not be as strong in.
Okay, fantastic. Another question that's just come in, and hopefully I'll communicate this clearly. The question says, how is performance on large 25K to 50K networks with 150K work orders times 10 across the enterprise?
Yeah, probably I should take this one. So the reason why I showed you this this compare thing before I synchronized the project is one of our main goals was performance. Performance means that we have a very elaborate algorithm who's comparing the fields just that you want to synchronize, so the comparison goes fairly quick, and then we only synchronize the objects which have really changed. It is, of course, if you do a bulk first initial upload from one system to another, and everything is new, like you saw it in the demonstration, then it is what it is. And especially when you synchronize a lot of activities into the same network, if the number goes above 500 activities per network, then there is, of course, a very big challenge on the SAP system. But there are some things that you can do in SAP customizing to mitigate these and to get better performance results. And with our services would also come some SAP project system or plant maintenance consultancy where we can show you how you can optimize the time and make SAP not think that it has to calculate everything which it has not to calculate because it was already calculated by Safran.
Yeah, if I may add a point to that, I think Matthias there's a key point in there that Matthias articulated, is that the fidelity, one of the reasons why SAP wants a partner like Safran is we handle the fidelity of the project data very well, and we're a highly scalable solution. Within SAP, you might not need the activity details in there, and you can bubble that up to the WBS element. So if you have 50,000 activity projects, you might not want to transfer all those back to SAP, because it doesn't matter which project management system you're using, you still have the same challenge. Now, HANA changes the game a little bit because of the inline memory, but if you're running on traditional databases, you're constantly going to be faced with this challenge, and it's more of a business process question. Do you need all the detail in SAP, or should all the detail be in the fit-for-purpose planning and scheduling solution summarized in SAP?
Okay, great. We've got more questions come in. If you have a question, definitely would encourage you to submit it now via the chat panel so we can get to it before the top of the hour. So we definitely want to be respectful of everyone's time. Dean, next question I think you're going to want to take is what customers in North America are using Safran Project currently?
We have quite a few customers in North America. Just to name a few, MH Worth, Aker Solutions, Talisman, who's also on the call today, so forgive me for not mentioning those guys, ProSep, Harvest Energy, FAA. I mean, those are a few off the top of my head. But we have many customers, and we're adding many more every month.
Okay, great. Another question we've had come in says, can Safran handle all logic relation types such as tandem SS/FF between two activities?
I think that's a Wes question. Wes, can you help us with that one?
Yeah, we handle all standard, start to start, finish to finish, all the kind of standard relationships, so yes.
Okay, great. Next question we have is, does the data mapping SAP Safran always have to be one-to-one, or can it be on the summary level? I think Matthias, is that one you'd like to take?
Yeah. You can work on a summary level. That means if you have the more detail in Safran, you can roll up information from a lower level to a summary activity in Safran, and then just synchronize the summary activity into SAP. As Dean mentioned before, you might not want to have every detail that you have in Safran as your scheduling tool also in SAP. SAP, you're more interested in material for purchase requisition and reservations and for cost and that stuff. And we can find there a way that you figure out on which level you want to integrate and what details should stay in Safran, and the main benefits from SAP when it comes to purchasing and logistics stay in SAP.
All right, fantastic. Well, that concludes all of the questions we've had come in, and we wanted to thank everyone for being with us today. We hope you found the last hour useful and valuable to you and what you're working on in your company. And we'll be posting this webinar recording on our website at safran.com for you if you'd like to refer to it later and review it. So once again, thank you for joining us, and thank you to our presenters for today's presentation, and we will see you soon.